This is Chapter 7 of The Road Ahead. Wine can't fix everything, but banter can. Voices dropped when Roman wandered into the next room. Faintly, a jazz trio flowed through the speakers of the small radio. The CD to which it belonged was placed neatly beside the device, and the cover was adorned with yellow swirls and dark blocked letters. At the center of the room was a table. Spread across it were all of the manila folders, and behind it Janice stood hunched over the papers. His muttering could be heard softly beneath the walking bass. Too cool to celebrate? Roman's words made Janice jump. He snapped around, only letting his guard down as he took in Roman's form. A tired sigh escaped his lips. There are more important things to be done. Can you not sacrifice even a few minutes? You should see it. The others are really hitting it off. Janice chuckled, though his smile didn't carry the same fondness. I'm afraid I've got other things to worry about at the moment. You should go. I have work to do. He waved Roman off with his hand, but the latter ignored it. I could help you, and your job could be done faster. That's not necessary. Go back to the others. Come on. It's not fair to make you sit and do all the behind-the-scenes stuff while we're out celebrating. It's my choice. Janice picked up a wine glass from the edge of the table. The dark liquid swirled in the glass before he downed it all, grimacing at the bitterness. He poured another glass. So, why not let me help you? Roman grabbed a folder from the table before Janice could snatch it away. He opened it to reveal the same file he had found earlier. The words, Experiment 72, still bore on the page, glaring at him with scribbled black ink. You're just the most wonderful person ever, aren't you? Janice's voice dripped with sarcasm. I suppose some could say that. Roman winked, and Janice scowled at him. He wasn't the only one who could be clever. He plucked the torn picture from the file. What was left of the image caught his eyes. Roman studied it, turning it to show to Janice. Who is this, anyway? Janice's jaw clenched. He wouldn't look Roman in the eye. Give me the folder. I don't see why you've got to be so secretive all the time. Is it so hard to accept just a little help? Give me the folder. And what if I didn't? Why must you be so closed off? Why separate yourself when we just did something amazing? What is so important that I can't help you? Give it now. Janice's hand shot out to grab at the file, but Roman jumped back just in time. He held it close to his chest, just as he had done when escaping the facility. I won't so much as think about handing you this until you answer my questions. You dragged us into this mystery, and I deserve some explanation. Oh, for God's sakes, give it to me! He thrust forward before Roman had the time to react, and caught the corner in his fingertips. It tore in two. Janice clutched his piece as if it were to be something precious. It was, of course, though from the way Janice's eyes sunk to the floor, Roman knew it had meant more than he was letting on. Now look at it, Janice whispered. He dropped into his chair and let the torn half slide across the table. It lingered at the edge, a breath away from plummeting to the floor. He dropped his head into his hands. I told you not to stay. Roman was at a loss for words. The folder piece felt heavy in his hands. Chestnut hair glared at him from the photo. Everything had been torn now. Experiment 72 was nothing more than a broken memory. I'm sorry. He wanted to crawl into nothingness. So much for being helpful. Janice waved it off, resting his chin on his hand as the other reached for the wine glass. Don't be. I didn't expect you to understand. But I want to understand. I've lived through the sights of Tetracorp, even if it was just one mission. I may not know everything, Janice, but how can I if you push everyone else away? Janice took another swig from the wine glass in response. His fingers tapped lightly on the table, the jazz track in the background long forgotten. I suppose I may have been a little closed off. A little? Fine, but you can't blame a man for being on edge. Aside from Virgil and Remus, I'm traveling the world to dismantle a corrupt corporation with complete strangers. There was a twinge of a smile at that remark. The Janice Roman had known for the past 48 hours was starting to peek through. Roman allowed a grin to spread across his face, the same shining smile that was said to be nearly irresistible back home. You can fix that, you know. Janice raised a brow. Oh, really? Do tell. Step away from your work, just for a bit. He got a skeptical look at that. Roman sighed. It'll still be there when you come back in the morning, but for now, why don't you celebrate? Who knows? With a bit of communication, we may no longer be strangers. He winked to emphasize his point, though it was likely more corny than charming. Fortunately, it was enough to draw a laugh from the wine-holding man. Janice stood, his eyes slipping to the files on the table before settling on Roman. I suppose I could accept your offer, but I would like one thing in return. What would that be? The assurance that you will never try to be helpful by tearing the evidence in half. Roman huffed, crossing his arms tightly over his chest. You're the one who grabbed it. Only after you ignored my orders. Orders? What are you, a sergeant? That would be Master Sergeant to you, Prince. Janice smirked. We don't accept such foolishness at Fort Darkside. And now you embrace the name. Janice held up the wine glass with a grin. He swirled it in his hand before downing the rest of the contents. Roman stifled a laugh. The files remained untouched on the table as Janice stood. He loomed in the threshold, glancing between the two spaces. Hesitant. Roman saw it in the way his eyes lingered just a moment too long on the manila folders. What secrets did they hold behind their blocked lettering? A soft sigh escaped Roman's lips. He held out a hand, almost jokingly in the way that he skipped into the next room, beckoning Janice to follow. Come on. You've got to have some kind of fun for once in your life. How do you know I wasn't having fun before? Janice raised his brow with a grin, though he still took Roman's hand. You look at those stacks of paper as if they're ripping you apart by the second. Bold of you to assume that isn't my look of endearment. Roman only chuckled. He led Janice into the next room, not caring to shut off the radio in the kitchen. He didn't quite mind how the plucking of piano keys could be heard dimly in the background. It was like a soundtrack, the perfect backing to the new chapter of their adventure. He spotted Logan and Remus in the same place he had left them. Both were sitting on the floor, though Logan seemed to be a little more relaxed. He had shifted into a crisscross position and rested his back against the coffee table in the center of the room. Still enjoying the documentary, I see, Roman remarked with a wink. You both are a bunch of nerds. A chorus of shushing followed his statement. Roman moved to put a hand over his heart in mock offense, though his gaze was redirected to the couch just behind them. Gentle breathing surfaced as another layer of sound among the hum of the TV and the still-present jazz melodies. Roman had to suppress his delighted exclamation at the sight before him. Curled in the corner of the couch was a mass of light blue and violet. It seemed Virgil had come down from his post upon the arm of the sofa, and now lay with his eyes closed atop the cushions. Patton's head rested on his shoulder. He was curled tightly against Virgil's side, while Virgil had managed to unconsciously rest an arm around Patton's shoulders. "They've been like that for quite some time now," Logan said. Janice sighed knowingly, and Remus began to laugh. Roman didn't even have to ask before the former pulled out a $5 bill from his pocket and reluctantly handed it over. A side glance from Janice was enough to indicate he wasn't open to discussing the origins of whatever bet they had formed. Roman shuffled over to take a seat beside Logan. He offered a smile, and Logan reflected the action, this one seeming to be genuine. Leave it to a nature documentary to raise the biology major's spirits. Remus patted the ground beside him, and after rolling his eyes, Janice moved to sit down. The room grew silent, though this was a comfortable kind. The stress of the unknown lingered in the presence of the evidence in the next room over, but for now, Roman allowed himself to breathe. Everyone had finally settled, and with good reason. A night of peace was a small price to pay in the grand scheme of things. After all, when the morning sun arose, there would be no trace of celebration. The game was set, and sooner or later they'd have to make their second move. This has been Chapter 7 of The Road Ahead. Thank you so very much for listening, and I will see you next time for Chapter 8.